All right, so we continue on with this arena series, I guess now. So far, I have done the Frost Bank Center, the home of the San Antonio Spurs, the Mortgage Matchup Center, the home of the Phoenix Suns. I still call it the Footprint Center, but the home of the Phoenix Suns. And now, after a poll that I conducted earlier in the week, I asked if you guys wanted to hear or wanted to listen to or watch the history of the Miami Heat arenas or the Detroit Pistons arenas, and a lot of you picked the Pistons. Since the Pistons are the hot commodity right now, as I think they may be 14 or 15-2 as of this video. So let us begin. Detroit Pistons, it is. So, as we all know, Detroit Pistons, they play Detroit. Pistons play in Detroit. Haha. But it hasn't always been like that. No. It has not always been like that. If anybody know the history of the Detroit Pistons, especially Pistons fans, we take it back to 1937. Before the Pistons name came into existence, the franchise was known as the Fort Wayne Zonar Pistons, a semi-pro team out of Fort Wayne, Indiana, founded by Fred Zonar, if I pronounced that name correctly, who owned multiple businesses in the automotive industry. But in 1941, the team joined the NBL. During this time, the team's games were located in the Northside High School gym, which they played in from 1941 to 1952. Yes, this was a high school gym they played in. Also during this time, the team would switch leagues to the BBA in 1948 and will be rebranded as the Fort Wayne Pistons. This team will win 2 championships as members of the NBL in 1944 and 1945. Now, the Pistons owner, Fred Zonar, did broker the combination of the BBA and the NBA, making the Pistons one of the first teams to join the league. During this time, the Pistons would play their games at the Allen County War Memorial Coliseum, and they played there from 1952 to 1957. This stadium will hold up to 8,000 people at a building cost of $3 million. Now, both of these arenas are still around today. Zonar, if I'm really pronouncing that name right, Zonar would soon move the Pistons from Fort Wayne to Detroit, Michigan in 1958. One of the reasons for the move, Fort Wayne was just too small of a city. Other teams were in larger markets like New York, Philly, and so on and so on. And Detroit, at the time, was the nation's 5th largest city. A fall from grace from what it is now. I think it might be somewhere in the 18s, around from 10 to 20, I think, maybe in the 20s, I don't know. I haven't checked in a long time. But that 5th spot is currently held by the Phoenix, Arizona. But the owner kept the Pistons name to reflect on the city's automotive industry. The city hadn't seen basketball since the wartime, losing Detroit Gems of the NBL, which actually would become, drum roll please, no drum roll. This team would become the Minneapolis Lakers, aka Los Angeles Lakers, later on. The other team they had actually had 3 different teams in Detroit. The second team was the Detroit Falcons of the BBA, and lastly, the Detroit Vagabond Kings. Fitting. The Pistons' new home would be the Detroit Olympia or the Olympic Stadium, the home to the former Detroit Gems. The stadium will hold 15,000 people, one of the biggest arenas in the league capacity-wise. The Pistons would play there from 1958 to 1961. The Detroit Olympia would be demolished in 1986 due to poor locations and poor quality, of course. And the current occupant at the time of the destruction or demolish was the Detroit Red Wings, which was looking for a new stadium their own selves. Now, for anybody who's from Detroit, you remember the letters Olympia? They were saved from destruction and moved into a storage unit at the Joe Louis Arena, but was soon restored in the Red Wings' current arena, the Little Caesars Arena. We'll get to that later. But to add, the Pistons will alternate arenas during this time period when they played in Olympia, playing games at the Memorial Building, currently known as the Callahan Hall, and current home to the University of Detroit Mercy Titans basketball. Now, the Pistons would only play at Callahan Hall if the Olympia had other engagements. And after the Olympia, there was the Cobb Arena. And by this time, Zonar sold the Pistons to the businessman, a glass magnate, Bill Davidson. The Pistons would play at the Cobb Arena from 1961 to 1968. Cobb Arena, technically still located on the shores of the Detroit River in downtown Detroit. Now, during this time, a little insight of what the Pistons was doing during this time, they was not a great team. They was a terrible team during this time. Now, they did have the likes of George Yardley and Dave DeBusschere and Dave Bing and Bob Leonard, but things just wasn't going right for them because DeBusschere would end up going to the New York Knicks and winning 2 titles there. Bailey Hall would end up going to the Baltimore Bullets in 1964. So it just wasn't a good time for the Pistons during that time. But moving on, I'm not going to hark too much on the actual Detroit Pistons, history of winning and losing. This is just about the arenas. So moving on. Now, Bill Davidson, the new owner of the Detroit Pistons, grew to dislike the Cobb Arena and opted not to move in with the Red Wings at the nearby Joe Louis Arena, named after the legendary boxer. So the team was moved to the suburbs, Pontiac, Michigan. The new arena, the multi-purpose stadium, the Pontiac Silverdome, aka the Silverdome, was originally named the Pontiac Metropolitan Stadium. The stadium was built for $55.7 million, seating 80,000 with 102 luxury suites and 7,000 club seats. Due to the stadium's unique roof, Teflon fiberglass with air pressure, the elements got to it at times to the point Pistons had to play games at Joe Louis Arena in the season of 1984 to 1985. And thanks to the expensive repairs and delays of the Silverdome, the Pistons would eventually receive a new arena 4 miles away. The most famous of all the Pistons arenas, and probably one of the most famous arenas in NBA lore for reasons, the Palace of Auburn Hills. Up until the Pistons moved to the Palace, the Pistons, like I said, didn't really see good times until a certain point guard was drafted. And even after Isaiah Thomas was drafted, he still needed help to build a championship team. On the contrary, I always say Jordan need. We're not going to get into that. You know where I'm going with that. The Pistons moved into the Palace of Auburn Hills in 1988. The arena was built at a low cost of $90 million and doubled the luxury suites of the Silverdome. The Palace would be one of the first of the modern arenas in the NBA, with the building boom of NBA arenas that was taking place during the late 80s. Notable arenas around this time: the Bradley Center, former home to the Milwaukee Bucks; the Charlotte Coliseum, former home to the Charlotte Hornets; the Miami Arena, Miami Heat; Arco Arena, Sacramento Kings; Amway Arena, Orlando Magic. All those arenas are no longer in use or demolished. As we all know, the Bucks have Pfizer Forum. The Miami Arena is gone and become the American Airlines Arena. I don't think it's named that anymore. Arco Arena is no longer there. It's the Golden One Center for the Sacramento Kings. And Amway is, what is it, Amway now? It used to be, I thought it used to be Amway. I don't think it's Amway anymore for the new arena. I forgot what the new arena is called now. Ain't it like the Kia Arena? Yeah, Kia Center or Kia Arena, something like that. But anyways, moving on. Now, the Palace saw the rise of the Bad Boys Pistons, winning 2 championships against the Lakers and Blazers. But it also saw the rise of the GOAT. But there was a little incident that took place on November 2004. A dust-up that changed the NBA for some time. That incident will be known as Malice at the Palace, that saw the Pistons, Pacers, and fans engulf the fisticuffs. The Palace also saw the Pistons win their 3rd championship against the Lakers, as well as the former WNBA Detroit Shock win 3 championships before the team, I wouldn't say necessarily folded, but would change cities and eventually become the current WNBA team, the Dallas Wings. There was also a Malice in the Palace 2 that's not really talked about. And this brawl was between the Shock and the Spark in 2008. It was probably, if this was 2008, nobody really cared because everybody cared about the Celtics winning. But anyways, I guess the ground that the Palace stood on, it got some aggression somewhere. It's probably cursed. It got a lot of people having a lot of aggression in that stadium. Now, the Palace held plenty of concerts, including big names like Michael Jackson, Taylor Swift, Beyonce, and many others, especially Michael Jackson on his Bad tour in 1988, I think it was. During his lifetime, the arena constantly continued to upgrade. In 2005 and then in 2015, adding the state-of-the-art Jumbotron. The upgrades cost up to $117.5 million, but that wouldn't stop the owners from looking somewhere else to put their team in. And in short, in 2016, a decision was made. New Pistons owner Tom Gores decided it was time to move out of the Palace, thinking the Palace was becoming outdated, and wanted the team to be closer to the downtown's Detroit revival. So the Pistons joined the Red Wings and moving into the Little Caesars Arena in the heart of downtown, opening in 2017 after 3 years of construction. I think the original occupant was supposed to be the Red Wings, and Pistons decided just to jump on. The cost of this arena was $862 million. And this also came at a time when the Bucks eventually opened up Fiserv Forum 2 years later. I think it was a year later. The Kings opened up Golden One the year before, in 2016. And eventually the Warriors would move to Chase Bank Arena in 2019 or 20, I think it was. 2020. The arena, located in the heart of the city next to Ford Field, home of the Lions, and Comerica Park, home of the Tigers, and many convention centers down there. Now, the arena holds up to 20,000 people, 62 luxury suites, as well as connected to a new entertainment district, typical of all new stadiums and arenas these days. Gotta have the entertainment center and district. That's how you make your money. Now, the stadium is unique for its clear plastic roof concourse and having the big Little Caesars logo on the roof. Now, the name of the arena was not well liked by most occupants of the city. Most wanted the stadium to be named after Red Wing legend Gordie Howe, but that didn't happen. And ain't Little Caesars headquarters located in the city? Well, it would make sense to be named at Little Caesars Arena. You got Ford already. You already got Ford. They already used Pontiac, and now that Silverdome is gone already at this point. But anyways, this is another story for a different day. Now, this arena has not seen good times regarding the Pistons, as the Pistons have been utter trash up until last season. We ain't gonna forget that when they won 14 games just 3 seasons ago. I think it's only seen 2 playoff series, a sweep by the Bucks in 2019, and a thrilling 6-game series versus the New York Knicks last season. The way it's going for the Pistons, it might see its first finals game. We'll see. The arena was also named the Sports Facility of the Year in 2018. As for the Palace of Auburn Hills, well, the University of Oakland tried to buy the arena, but nothing happened out of that. The last event held in the arena was the Taste of Auburn Hills in 2017. It's funny, actually, the arena was still in top condition at its time of closing. It wasn't run down or anything like that, but they did move that big old Jumbotron to Arizona, to the Desert Diamond Arena for the Arizona Coyotes. And if you're familiar with the Arizona Coyotes, you know they do not exist anymore. They become the Utah Mammoth. Plus, the stadium didn't really, let's say, have walkability to it due to the Palace location far from the city, being in the suburbs. Kind of the same issue that the Frostbreak Center is facing in San Antonio. But eventually, the Palace of Auburn Hills was sold to a joint venture in 2019 for a mixed business office park. And so the Palace of Auburn Hills was demolished in 2020. In 2023, GM, the car company, will buy the land the arena stood on for factory purposes, mainly for their electric car business. And there you have it. That is the history of all the Detroit Pistons homes arenas. I think the most memorable one for the Pistons is probably the Palace of Auburn Hills, because, like I said, they won 3 championships in that arena. There was a massive brawl, and I think if you think about Pistons history, I think you always connect the Palace of Auburn Hills with the Detroit Pistons, along with their legendary jerseys in the 90s, and along with Isaiah Thomas and Joe Dumars and Grant Hill and the Ben Wallace and Rasheed Wallace and Tayshaun Prince and Chauncey Billups, all of them. I think that's where you connected with. And maybe a little bit of the Silverdome, but not too much, because there were really good times in the Silverdome up until Isaiah got there. And it really didn't take off for the Pistons until they got the team they got for the Bad Boys Pistons. At that time, like I said, it was in the Palace of Auburn Hills. But very fascinating history Pistons has. So how many stadiums have they had, just as a count before I end this video? They have had, let's count them up. They have had so far 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 stadiums so far. And just to add a little bit of insight, in March 12th, 1960, the Pistons hosted a playoff game against the Minneapolis Lakers at Grosse Pointe High School, when no other facility, including the Olympia Stadium, was booked for ice capitated, I'm pronouncing that right, and the University of Detroit was available. On April 27, 1984, like I said before, the Pistons played Game 5 of their playoff series against the New York Knicks at the Joe Louis Arena due to scheduling conflicts. And during the, like I said before, once again, the 84-85 season, with the Silverdome roof collapsing, caused the team to temporarily relocate to the Joe Louis Arena for 14 of their remaining 15 games of the season from March 6th to May 10th. The March 11th game was played at the Cabo Arena. So those were other times he had to, divert to playing somewhere else. But that is, like I said, the history of all the Detroit Pistons arena. Tell me what you guys think.